Hello there, Drew Hanish of Whiskey Lore, and it's time for another tasting video. Today I'm going to be doing a tasting of Craigellachie 13. You may have seen this on your shelf. It is fairly widely available now, and actually a real bargain. I bought this tin for $51, and I think most people probably will see it somewhere between $50, $60, and I've seen it for, 50 pounds in England and Scotland as well. So I guess we could call this a value aged dram, because this is really an excellent price for this whiskey. And this is one of my favorites. This is my second bottle, actually. And so I'll tell you a little bit about it. If you want some, I love the design. I love that they kind of stuck with that late 19th century kind of a style of presentation here on the tin. Lots to read. When I was learning marketing, they probably wouldn't have told me to write quite so much information, but there's like a whole education here. You can sit here and sip on your dram and get a full education as well. So I'm going to go through some of this with you and also talk to you a little bit about what makes this whiskey a bit different. But first, I want to send out a thank you to Matt Kirkpatrick. He is a longtime Whiskey Lore Society member, and if you would like to become a member of the Whiskey Lore Society and help me produce more of these and more Whiskey Lore episodes, would love to have you on board. And also for the video, if you're enjoying these tasting videos, make sure that you like and subscribe. Subscribing and liking, make sure that you get to see more of these videos. You're reminded when they come out, and also it helps grow the channel so that we get more friends here and we can start talking about these whiskeys down in the comments, which you are always encouraged to do. So I'm reading all of this and I'm like, okay, Speyside whiskey. Interesting thing about Craigellachie, it's right at the fork of the River Fiddich, which goes towards Dufftown, where you get Balvenie and Glenfiddich and Mortlach. And if you are right at the spot where the two join, right over to the side is Macallan, and then down the road is Abelard. So there are a lot of distilleries just right in this one little section. This is not one you can go tour, unfortunately. But I've looked longingly at it because I do enjoy this particular whiskey. So interesting age statements for these. 13 and 17 are their two main ones. It talks about the two originators of the company, Peter Mackey being one of those, and I'm sure we'll talk about him at some point. He had a lot of influence in the Scotch whiskey industry. And then on the back, it goes in and it tells you it's non-chill filtered. It's a darker whiskey, which makes you think there might be color in it, and they said nothing about color on the tin, but this is a blend of sherry cask whiskey and bourbon cask whiskey. So that sherry cask can sometimes give quite a bit of color depending on how long it sits in there and how much of a percentage it is. The other thing it talks about is down here is worm tubs, and you'll see a little image there of what a worm tub looks like. I've been to a couple of distilleries that have worm tubs. Old Pulteney is one that sticks out to me as one. Mortlach has one. They're basically these big tubs that are outside, and so when the whiskey comes off the still, it needs to cool down. And normally it would go through a condenser. Go to Balcones in Texas, you'll see that their condenser goes like right above the still. And it's in open air. Whereas Craigellachie, what it's going to do is it's going to go outside the building, and then it's going to go down into this water tank, where what it's doing is basically cooling down the liquid as it's going through that copper at a faster rate. And what that ends up doing, the reason they use copper in stills is to pull out sulfates. And sulfates, sulfur, it can be a very off-putting note in a whiskey if it were there, but a lot of distilleries strip it completely out, If you use that worm tub, you're actually not stripping it all out. And what you end up getting, especially when you have an American oak barrel that had bourbon in it, you start to pull out more of the toffee notes. You start to get a little more of that vanilla in there. And it also makes a much meatier kind of a whiskey. So, the more I learn about worm tubs, the more I'm really impressed by thinking about the whiskeys that I've had that have used worm tubs and the effect that they have on them, because every one that I've had has been complex, and I sense that maybe that complexity is coming through from the use of the worm tub. Worm tubs are very expensive, so they don't tend to be in a lot of distilleries, but the ones that use them, they do an excellent job. So let's see if there's anything else I was going to mention about this. No. 46% ABV, which is great. I think when you're in Scotch whiskeys, for me, a sweet spot is going to be 46% and above. So this is a dream to smell for me. This is the neck pour. I had just bought a brand new bottle, and it seemed a little light initially when I poured it, but the rule of thumb is let it sit 1 minute for every year that it was in the cask. So I've let it sit for a while, and now all of a sudden those nice little vapors are starting to come up. You're getting some of the baking spice in there. You're getting the pear, and the apple is really strong in there. The vanilla pulls through on this. And I guess it's a cinnamon, and a little bit of oak comes in. And I like to tell people when they buy this, and you're gonna spend $50 on a whiskey here, that at that lower price you might think, well, this is just when I'm hanging out with friends and we'll all be sitting around drinking and not really paying attention to the whiskey. No, this one you should pay attention to. This is one where you sit by yourself, you're relaxing, you got your feet kicked up, maybe there's a fire going, and you're just experiencing this one, because the nose brings so many different things. And we're about to jump into the palate, which I think is the prize of this whiskey. Oh, it's so milky. It's really nice. You get those fruits still come through. Stone fruits are in there. Little pineapple comes in. There's a bit of spice in there. The caramel is right there, kind of a toffee thing going on. Really nice, pleasant, almost a mintiness that rolls on into the finish, which is biscuits and juicy apples. Juicy apples. And I am a big fan of apples. So for me, if it's got apple going on in there somewhere, I am going to be a huge fan. And then go back in for another nose, because all of a sudden the baking spices just start coming out. Once it's on your palate, something frees your nose up to really start pulling in some of the rest of the experience that you may have missed the first time that you nosed it. This is just a fantastic whiskey. It really is. On a grading scale, I circled very good. I think this is an excellent whiskey. It's going to be complex. If you're just getting started in Scotch whiskeys, you're probably not going to pull out as much as I'm pulling out of this. It's taken me, a couple years to get my nose ready for all of this and my palate ready for all of this. And I've really gotten to a point where I can fully appreciate this. I have a friend of mine who I let taste this, who hadn't been tasting quite as much. And initial impression a year ago was, whatever. And then he came back down, tried it again, and he's like, wow, I want to trade you for that bottle. And he said, yes, I get it now. I understand. So yeah, Very, very good value whiskey here that is not at all like a value whiskey. I'm giving this one an excellent, no matter what the price is. I think this is a really good whiskey. If you love the videos, make sure that you subscribe and like, and I've got more of them coming up. We're going to run through a bunch of videos here. I'm going through my collection and going to just day after day put a bunch of different videos out. So I hope you enjoy. I can't keep this away from my nose. Cheers and Slanjava. Mm.